Hey everyone, this is Yatavio back again with another gear review. This time it's of the Squier by Fender J Mascis Signature Jazzmaster. You can see his signature there on the back of the headstock. This is my first single coil Jazzmaster. I did about a year ago or so. I did a review of the Modern Player Jazzmaster, which oddly enough, I don't think they make anymore. So oddly enough, after doing that review and getting some feedback from everyone who saw it, thank you by the way if you did, I can't find it really for sale anywhere. So I hope that if you wanted it, you can find it somewhere on the used market, but I haven't been able to find it since. But anyway, this was my first single coil Jazzmaster, and it's the closest I've been able to come to a true Jazzmaster, quite honestly, because I just can't afford an American one, and even the classic player Mexican one's a little bit out of my price range for a guitar. But, you know, I bought this one kind of taking a chance on it, seeing what it would be like. And overall, I have to say, it's a really good guitar, especially considering what's on the headstock. Like a lot of you, I had a lot of trepidation buying a Squier guitar. My very first guitar ever was a Fender Squier, like Strat. Wasn't a very good guitar, but it was enough to, you know, like a lot of us, enough to learn how to play. But I have to say, not really having dealt with Squier in the 20 years since that, they've come a long way. If this is any sort of indication as to their quality, my plan, you know, it's 21. So this guitar is 21 jumbo frets. Obviously, it's white, kind of the lighting in this room is a little yellow, but it's white, kind of a off-white almost. Some people refer to it as almost like a classic refrigerator, in that the paint is very thick on there. You don't see any wood grain through the paint. The faceplate is like a brass color. It is metallic. I do think that because it's single coil, it does give it kind of a snappier, or just a little more like metallic tone, which I think is interesting, more than it would if it had a pearl or some sort of plastic pickguard, but maybe that's just my imagination. It's got, unlike the Modern Player Jazzmaster that I did a few years ago, it doesn't have, I should say, unlike the Modern Player Jazzmaster that I reviewed a while ago, it does have the classic Jazzmaster electronics. So two single coil pickups, two-way selectors, or I should say three-way selector switch, volume and tone, switch to another circuit, volume and tone, which we'll get to in a minute. I did just want to kind of go through and from kind of like tip to stern, kind of talk about all the different things that I've noticed on this guitar since I've had it. So from the very headstock here, these are vintage style tuners that are string through tuners. Just so you know, those aren't honestly my favorite kind of tuners. It's the kind where you have to stick the string in there, then wrap it around. But it's very vintage style. It looks vintagey. If you like it, that's cool. It's really not much to complain about, because if you really want to switch out the tuners, that's going to cost you just a few bucks. It won't be too bad. The nut is probably the cheapest part of this guitar. It is like kind of a crappy plastic nut. If I had the money and the time to take it to somewhere, I'm a little bit trepidatious doing it myself. I might have that replaced. Again, probably wouldn't cost you that much money. The biggest cost would be the labor of actually having someone do it. So if you have any experience yourself, you can do it for next to nothing, I'm sure. Next up, the fretboard. It's a rosewood fretboard. It feels really nice. It feels very smooth. It's really easy to play. They say it's jumbo frets. To be honest, like when it comes to Fender frets, I don't notice a gigantic difference between them. Like maybe up here at the top, I have somewhat big fingers, and I have no problem fretting the notes like sometimes I do on other kinds of guitars. So maybe I sort of notice it, but it's pretty standard. It's a very standard Jazzmaster scale. If you're into the like Stratocaster, you know, non-Jaguar and Mustang type Fender scales, then you kind of know what you're in for. The neck is a C-shaped neck. I think it's like 9.5 diameter neck. Fairly thin, actually, feeling. Unlike a lot of like Telecaster necks I've played that have been pretty like baseball bat feeling. This is pretty thin, not as thin as maybe some super speed metal guitars that you might pick up, but this isn't a metal guitar. I've read reviews that the fret wires were rough. I really have not found that to be a case. I think like with a lot of import guitars, this was made in China. With a lot of import guitars, I think maybe it's a case-by-case basis. It's based on how well did your unit come out of the factory. But mine came out pretty perfect in that. I mean, maybe on the fret ends, there's a couple could be fouled down potentially, but like up at the top, up at the bottom here, but nothing that I would really spend that much time or money fixing. It feels pretty perfect to me. The neck on the back is like a satin finish, unlike the modern player that was a glossy finish. To be honest, it's not my favorite. It feels like this is the only part of the guitar that to me feels like Squier cheap. And I don't know if it has to do with the wood that they used, the finish they did, or what it was. But it doesn't leave me with like a super deluxe feeling. I guess maybe that was the point. And it's definitely able to. You can definitely go around the neck very easily, but it's just not my favorite. I prefer a glossy neck, but there it is. I think it may have been a choice that J Mascis made. So going down to the pickups, these are the two big soap bar Jazzmaster style pickups. They look that way anyway. They look very vintagey, and it's aged white plastic on the pickups. I read online, though, that it's not your classic Jazzmaster pickup in the way that it's made, in the way that it's wired. I think J Mascis wanted it wired in a way that made it kind of hotter and more suitable for rock, the kind of rock sound that Dinosaur Jr. had. One thing I do like is Jazzmasters I've heard and the couple that I've played, sometimes with the classic style, especially like vintage style tuners, it leaves me with the feeling of kind of shrillness. This has got no shrillness at all, and it's really pretty versatile. But I have actually read that the way that Mascis had them done, makes them closer to like a P90 than to an actual Jazzmaster pickup. So you've got your Jazzmaster purists who will say this is not a true Jazzmaster, but to me it sounds pretty good. It is single coil, so if you like that single coil twang, this definitely has it. So for those who are not aware, the way the pickup configuration works is with this switch down, it affects the lead circuit, so all the controls at the bottom of the guitar are active. So you've got your standard 3 position. So neck, bridge, and then middle. I kind of like the middle because it really does have a nice kind of jangly sound. If you were into the Beatles and maybe British Invasion type music, this could definitely do the trick for you. Can do definitely the surf stuff if that's what you're in the mood for. It handles, the lead circuit handles distortion pretty well. So in the pickup selector right now, I'm all the way to the bridge side. That was the Electro Harmonics Big Muff, so big fuzz pedal. Does that pretty well. Here's a clone of a wrapped pedal. Does a pretty good job. I also have a tube screamer built into my amp, By the way, I'm going through a Ibanez tube screamer. It's called TSA 15. I like it because it's got, I think, a lot of good clean headroom, but also it has a tube screamer, an Ibanez tube screamer built right into the amp. So here that sounds like this. Right now, all I have on my board playing is an EQ pedal to give it a little bit more brightness, and a reverb pedal to kind of have it just, I think, sounds nicer. But if you want to hear the complete dry sound, this is what it sounds like. So it is capable of some good and clean sounds. I'm going to turn some other sounds on and make it a little bit more fun. So it is capable of some good spacey sounds. So one thing I have noticed, and take this with a grain of salt, because I think as I get older, I think I'm just a humbucker guy, and that's who I am. But I have noticed that the pickups don't really have that punch or bite that humbuckers might have, especially when you run it through, like I'm using my Zoom, what is this, the MS-70 CDR, to have big, I do ambient music sometimes, so big oceans of delay and chorus. So I feel like if you add too much on top of that guitar, it does get a little bit lost. It's not very punchy. It shies away from being super bright. Even though I'm in the lead and bridge position, and my tone is turned like pretty much all the way up. It's up to you. I mean, it's just something I notice. It doesn't push itself to the front like a humbucker pickup would. But also, that's why a lot of us have many different guitars, right? So that's the lead circuit, but if I flip this switch up, I activate the rhythm circuit. And once the rhythm circuit is activated, these controls down here do nothing, and what does do something are these controls up here. In fact, the bridge pickup's no longer working. It's all going through the neck pickup, and you've got only two controls, volume and tone. So right now, volume is all the way up, and tone is all the way up. So it sounds like this. You can, of course, dial back that. So all the way back. So that was me playing as I just turned the tone knob up. It is capable of some pretty jazzy tones. I will say that it's interesting to have two totally different circuits inside the same guitar, because it really does make you feel like you've got two guitars going. Even though that's kind of woody and neck pickup and kind of a low tone, even if I try to replicate the same thing on the lead circuit and putting my selector switch all the way forward, close, but it sounds a little bit different. I can even dial back the tone on the lead circuit. Sounds a little bit different than this. It still rolls back some of the highs, even more than the lead circuit does. So I've also heard of people doing things like using the pickup selector strategically, like perhaps you have part of your song playing live that you want loud, and you want to go immediately to a slow, quiet part, and back to loud. So you can kind of use it as a volume switch in that way. Keeping going down the guitar, as we get down here, yes indeed, this is a Nematic Bridge. Again, some people are going to complain about that. I think that was a positive change. Having dealt with other kinds of Fender and other kinds of just weird bridges over the years, my personal opinion is they got it right when they invented Nematic Bridges, and we should all just switch to Nematic Bridges. Some people will say that you can get better tonality out of other kinds of Jazzmaster bridges, but the folks who say that usually want you to buy like a mastery bridge, and I've heard those are really good, but now we're talking a lot of money, and I just don't know if the amount of money you would spend on that to really be that much better than a Nematic Bridge to justify the cost. Your mileage may vary. Also going down the line, we have a vintage style Tremolo System, which I actually think is awesome. I actually love this tremolo. The only things that you might not like about it, if you care about brands, is it does not have the Fender logo stamped into it like my modern player does. It's just a blank plate. In addition to that, it does not have a locking mechanism. So maybe that bugs you. To me, it's not a huge deal because I really don't break strings. And if I was going to play a gig live, I'd probably have multiple guitars set up anyway. I'm not going to change a string and then stop a show to change a string anyway. So the fact that whether or not the tuning mechanism is going to lock, to me, has only marginal difference. It's not enough to make me have to switch this out. The thing I will say that I do definitely like about this, more than the modern player Jazzmaster and a lot of other, especially Fender guitars with tremolo systems, is this tremolo arm. First off, I love the long tremolo arms that you get on Jazzmasters. This tremolo arm does not screw in. It actually is I understand, a vintage style system that pops in. So the first time I did it, and I'm not going to take it out because it does make you a little bit afraid the first time you do it, because you really have to pop it in, force it in, and you have an instant where you feel like, oh man, am I going to break this thing? I looked more into the mechanics of how this tremolo system works, and it's actually, as tremolo systems go, it's pretty basic. There's just basically a big fat spring underneath the plate here that when you depress the arm, all you're doing is you're pushing down on a big fat spring. There's not a lot of engineering that goes into it comparatively. But you really got to press down, and once you press down, this thing is in there. I've heard people complain, and I've seen in reviews of saying oh, my tremolo bar popped out. I hate this vintage style, it needs to screw in. I think what you're doing is not popping it in all the way, and the reason I say that is I did that for the first 2 weeks I had this thing, until I read some stuff online and saw that there was a little bit of a gap between where the curve of the bar met with the hole that goes into the tremolo system. There needs to be very little gap there. Mine was maybe a half inch out. If you've got some a half inch gap, keep pushing, push it until it locks in all the way. The way this thing is set up is you can just put it in a case with the tremolo bar in. It'll be fine. And once it's in there all the way, it's not coming out, even if you do like dives up. And my favorite part is that it just floats. It just floats there wherever you put it, whether you want it down here, like you don't want to worry about it, or you want it up here because you want to use it. So on my modern player Jazzmaster and other Fender guitars that I own and have owned, the tremolo bar is screwed in, and I don't really like those as much because instead of floating where you put it, it just always will swing down, and so you always have to reach down and grab it, which to me is an extra step while I'm trying to finish a sequence and then do that awesome whammy bar thing in the last note. I don't want to have that stutter step of having to reach down and grab it. I like the bar just being where I left it, and that's what this thing definitely gives you. I actually have to say, I think what I'm going to do, I've found these Squier Tremolo Systems on eBay for like $35 a piece. I think I'm going to buy one and put it in my modern player Jazzmaster because I just like it so much. But overall, this Jazzmaster is really good. If you want to get maybe not all the way, but close to what a actual American or classic player Jazzmaster would give you, for I think if you buy it like a standard retail, it's like $450, but you can find it on eBay for $400 or less. For less than $400, this is the closest that you're going to get to a true vintage style Jazzmaster. I think it looks awesome. I think it plays really great. I'm not a huge fan of the neck. The electronics are not as perfect as they would be on American Jazzmaster, but that's, it's also not like $2,500 too. For the money, I think this is one of the best value guitars out there, and I think this thing just looks killer. Different strokes for different folks. Some people might not be able to get over the Squier on the headstock. I've even seen stuff of people online like sanding it off and putting Fender on there. I really don't care that much. For me, in my book, if it sounds good, it is good, and it doesn't really matter that much what's on the headstock. I would recommend it if you're looking for a Jazzmaster. It's really great stuff. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Please also consider subscribing or liking this video if you want to see me make more videos. I do have some more gear reviews coming. But again, thank you for continuing to watch, and keep on rocking.